Welcome back. Rivers politics is a never-ending conversation as far as that state is concerned. So it's back in focus because there are still things happening even after the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court has said the local government election is a nullity, nullified it. It said represent the budget to the Amewule-led House of Assembly. Well, the governor has done one by directing the local government chairman to leave, and then the head of local governments are now in charge. But the part of representing the budget is where the bone of contention is right now. And there have been two ultimatums so far given by the State House of Assembly. We've been joined in the program by Mr. Hassan Gimba. He's a legal manager at Transition Monitoring Group. He joins us from Abuja studio. Mr. Gimba, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
I just want to paint a little picture and then so you can give your own input and opinion as well as interpretation of the situation. So one part has been obeyed by the governor. The second part has not been followed through, saying he's waiting for the CTC. In fact, the State House of Assembly said they had sent the resolution of representation of the budget to the government house. The government said, we've not seen it. They brought out evidence that they've sent it, that it was rejected, back to sender. We don't know who is saying the truth and who is lying in all of this. But as a matter of fact, there's another ultimatum by the House of Assembly saying, bring the names of commissioner nominees so we can screen them because we want to go on recess. So we need to do a lot of housekeeping. So the back and forth continues even after the Supreme Court judgment. What's your take on this?
Thank you for having me. I think the challenge now is, based on the judgment of the Supreme Court, the 27 lawmakers that had earlier defected to the APC, which is, as we know, according to the Constitution, Section 109, any member that defects from any elected person that defects from a political party, and if the party is not having a crisis, that crisis should never be about the state and should never be about local government, but a national crisis. And maybe there is a merger of a political party. So if one of these situations is not covered, automatically I believe one loses his seat based on the provision of the Constitution. So, and as I have not seen the CTC as well of the judgment, I cannot say more about it. So speaking of the governor's ultimatum that was given to him by the State House of Assembly, they actually gave him 48 hours, which I believe is unreasonable, given that the judgment was passed just recently and he asked for time to study it and then respond by 7th of March, which should be this Friday. And then this is something that has been decided previously. In the case of Nasir El-Rufai versus the House of Representatives in 2003, the court held that a minimum of 7 days needs to be given for summons now by a legislative house, also covered by the Legislative House Act. So I believe this is something that is settled. The persistence now of the House to make sure he appears in 48 hours seems to have some underlying reasons that might not actually be related to ensuring that everything is done in the interest of law and justice.
So what do you anticipate would happen? Because another issue that is playing out is implementation of the Supreme Court judgment. And we had seen prior to this time cherry picking, so to speak, of court orders with which to obey and to jettison, prior to getting to the Supreme Court level. So who should we be looking to for application as to the enforcement of the Supreme Court judgment? Should we begin to see another selective approach to implementing the Supreme Court judgment?
Okay, I cannot speak to what they may actually do in terms of the approach, but it's well known in Nigeria that our representatives choose which law to follow and then maybe when to follow, and then when it comes to judgment, it's mostly the same. And had there been regard for law and order and constituted authority in the first place, Rivers wouldn't have found itself in the position that it is at the moment, which is very sad. And then with the also withdrawal of funding from the CBN as directed by the Supreme Court, this will likely affect the good people of Rivers State. And then, as we all know, the African staff is saying that when two elephants are fighting, the grass will suffer. So if the allocation is withheld, the good people of Rivers State are actually going to suffer. And then it will be in the interest of everyone now for the State House of Assembly and then for the governor himself to work together and then see how they will alleviate the suffering of the people. And then to do that, I think, is to try to pass the budget again, and then to do it as soon as possible. And even though I have seen from some news outlet that from the part of the governors, they believe the appropriation law has been passed, and then everything is started bad. So it remains to be seen how they actually work now in the interest of people. If this is allowed to drag on for months, then we are talking about salaries now of civil servants stopping, and then maybe even having issues of project stalling, even if the funds have earlier been allocated for as long as the payment has not been fully made. So the state is basically going to go to a ground still.
So now it looks...
And if I would love to add that,
okay,
they have to set aside the interests of one man, because what I believe and then what Transition Monitoring Group believes is the Constitution supersedes everything in this land. And then the position of the Constitution is clear on most of these issues. So going to court to actually forum shop, which is to pick which court you think is going to give you judgment, is abuse of Constitution. It's unethical for a lawyer to bring such a case before the Supreme Court. And Nigerians need to start speaking out on these issues. They need to, within the ambits of the law now, air their frustrations to what the judiciary is becoming and then what their laws and the constitutions are being made to look like in the eyes of Nigerians and in the eyes of the international community.
Let's talk about what is a reasonable thing to do on both sides. I would like you to speak to both the House of Assembly, led by the Speaker, Martin Amiewule, and the governor, led by the government led by Siminalayi Fubara. You made a statement, and thinking back, it appears that most of the judgment that comes from Abuja favors the pro-Wike end, and the ones that comes from the state favors the governor's end. Whether it's forum shopping or law according to justice is a different kettle of fish. The audience can make their decision on that. But what is the reasonable thing to do now on both sides, so that things don't escalate? Things can really escalate from 1 to 1 million in that state if things are not properly handled.
Okay, from the way I see it, it's like things have already escalated, because I was looking at the previous things that have happened. You have a situation where the State House of Assembly was burned, and then the local government council elections, we have had issues of talks taking over the process. And then these are things that if you look at them critically, especially under the Criminal Code Act, they could be interpreted as even treasonous or treasonable felony based on interpretation. We have a government that actually arraigned small children for treason, for protesting their rights. So if you look at the provision of Section 37 of the Criminal Code Act, which says that any person that attempts to intimidate or overawe a president or a governor of a state commits treason, and is punishable by death. So you see, the provision is not that clear and specific. And even Section 37 on the treasonable felony, it speaks to the same thing, intimidating a governor and then trying to remove him from office, sometimes through unconstitutional means. And if you look at the show of violence, this is something that can be described as unconstitutional, even if it's not directly going to the government house and then try to remove the governor from there and then take over. So if they cannot find a common ground, because one, Fubara was elected by the people of Rivers State. And then even if he was anointed by a godfather, the Constitution doesn't recognize a godfather. It recognizes the office of a governor, it recognizes the office of the deputy governor, and then at the same time, it recognizes those members of the House of Assembly. So they are the people that have that hold the people's mandate now, and they have to act in the best interest of the people. And then I think the best thing to do first and foremost is to allow for time for the governor now to go through the CTC of the judgment to know the situation that he is in. They have won, the Supreme Court recognizes them, but now they have to be magnanimous in defeat. They need to give him time to look at those things, and then, if possible, to come up with a budget that will work for the good people of Rivers State. And then whatever differences they must have had before, I think they need to resolve it now. If they are to go for impeachment, I'm looking at what the Constitution says under Section 188. He must have done something corrupt, that's one. And then for two, maybe abuse of power is something to look at. That's dereliction of duty. And going by all the summons they have presented to the governor that they claim to have served on the governor, and then of which the governor claimed not to have received, but it's available on the media, they are leaning towards impeachment. And then I believe this is going to further deepen the crisis in the state, because we are pulsing he's someone that is willing to fight. He made a statement that it's better he serves only one term than to rule Rivers State on his knees. And then I believe anyone that is given a mandate to serve a particular set of people, even if the person is a classroom monitor in a primary school, he will love to have autonomy over a list of, say, noisemakers, and then things like that that have to do with things like that have to do with a school. And then let alone now a state where you have a vision for a state. You were elected based on that vision, and then many years from now, people are going to remember you for what you did in office, and not for what another person forces you to do because he has power over you, or he feels like you owe him because he gave you that position in the first place.
Fantastic points. We just pray that all sides will find a common ground for the good of the people. The most important person here is the people. That's why I said the person, because it's millions of people in the state, but we have to look at them individually. Hassan Gimba, Legal Manager, Transition Monitoring Group, joining us from Abuja today. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll now switch gears away from all the hard talks. Let's talk about some fun. The creative space is what we'll explore next. Join us again.